Hi, welcome back. Okay, for this week's podcast, you might have already guessed it, but we're doing another interview with a student who was accepted this cycle, and she has decided to go to Marshall B. Ketchum University. And what's unique about her, well, not unique, but I should say interesting, last year she applied, did not get any interviews, so she contacted us this year for some help, and this year she received 10 interviews. So I'm going to go ahead and let her tell her story. And if you have any questions you want to contact us about what you might need to do in order to be a competitive applicant for this next cycle, just click on the link and go to our webpage and sign up for the free consultation. Otherwise, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes or Spotify, or just watch the video on YouTube. Thanks. Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. Today we're talking to one of our candidates that we work with this cycle who was accepted into actually a few programs, but I'll let her go ahead and introduce herself and tell you where she's going to PA school.
Hi everyone, my name's Crystal. I worked with James this cycle and I'm going to PA school at Marshall B. Ketchum in Fullerton, California.
Congratulations. So, um, this was not your first time applying, right?
No, this was my second cycle.
Okay. But this
Mhm.
was our first time working together, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just talk about, just real simply, why did you decide to become a PA?
Well, I didn't know too much about the PA profession before going to college, actually. So, my interest in medicine started in high school, and going into college, I had that same interest, but it wasn't really until I joined a pre-health sorority at my college, and I learned, more about the profession that way. We got to speak to some guest speakers at some events, and a lot of the girls in my sorority were also pre-PA, so I learned more about the profession that way. But that's kind of where, like, it really started, and then I think it was more like kind of middle, like in the middle of my college undergrad time, that where I was like, okay, this is probably the route that I'm going to take and I'm going to stick to it.
So before pursuing PA, did you ever consider any other career paths, doctor, physical therapy, anything else?
Yes, for sure. I went into college pre-med, but I feel like my heart really wasn't in it because I wasn't like doing a lot of research into, going to med school. So I kind of just like I knew I was like not super into it. But yeah, I mean, once I found out about the profession, I just feel like it clicked more with me. It just ended up being the career that I wanted for myself. But I'm glad I ended up on that route.
So what is it about PA that ultimately caught your attention that you decided to pursue that pathway?
Yeah, I mean, after college, because I just didn't want to start a patient care experience job during college. I wanted to really focus on my grades. So I really put everything off until I graduated. And that's when I started like looking into healthcare, jobs, doctors' offices that I could work in. And that's where I really started getting my hours. And that's also where I was more exposed to working with PAs just directly. But that was like the solidifying experience for me because talking to the PAs, there were like a lot of PAs in my clinic, luckily. So I got to really get close to them, have these really great relationships with them, and learn what their lives were like on a realistic daily basis. But that's really what drove it even further.
Okay. Were you where did you do your undergraduate work?
I went to undergrad at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and I graduated in 2020. And I also got a degree in biological sciences. So that's what I did.
Now, since you decided later to pursue PA, assuming you probably had to go back to school to get some of the prereqs completed.
Yes, because some of the prereqs that were common across a lot of PA programs were not offered at UCSB. So I think, yeah, I had to take anatomy and physiology at a local community college. Um, but the struggle with that was that it was kind of during COVID, and I ended up taking those labs online. a lot of labs online. And so it's important to look into school requirements and see which schools accept online labs and which don't, because I was actually, disqualified from applying to some schools because they didn't take online labs.
Mhm. Since you brought it up, let's talk about the COVID period. So how did that affect, your work, your education, shadowing, volunteering? How did that affect you?
Oh yeah. Well, it mostly affected my shadowing experience. It was really difficult to find any shadowing opportunities after graduating, and I graduated in 2020. There was like nothing available, but getting a job in healthcare was not hard at all. They were looking for people. Um, but mostly it affected shadowing. It affected volunteering because a lot of places were closed. Even like they just stopped their volunteer programs because of COVID. But that was the most difficult part. I kind of looked into other ways like online shadowing, which added a lot of hours to my shadowing experience.
Mhm. So what was your first role in healthcare to get patient care experience?
Well, okay. It was mostly my first healthcare role was volunteer experience in the hospital, but that was all the way back in high school. But my first paid healthcare experience was in a hematology oncology clinic. It's actually where I still work at now, but I started that right after graduating college. I started off as a front desk, receptionist, and then I told them I was interested in being a back office medical assistant. So they were able to transition me pretty easily. I had to get a certification. I had to get I ended up getting EMT certified just to be able to transition more smoothly into the back
Hmm.
office position. But yeah, I've been a back office MA for about like 3 years now. Three
Hmm.
years. Yeah, about 3 years. So I've been at the same clinic too in Hemonk.
Okay. And do you work directly with PAs?
I do. There's about 4 to 5 PAs in my office. So that was a really good opportunity for me.
Right. Okay. So you applied for PA school the first cycle. So did you receive any interviews or what happened during the first cycle?
Nope, nada. I got zero interview invites my first cycle, which was really disheartening. But I think it just drove me even for, just pushed me a little harder to do everything right the second cycle, which is when I reached out to you. But I was so scared. I was like, just, needing to get in the second cycle. And I was just looking into my options. And luckily I found you. But yeah, I mean, I got a lot of more interview invites this cycle for sure.
So let's just start over with the personal statement. So that's usually where we always start. So it's usually different than what people think in terms of a process. So how did you feel about working on the personal statement together? And be honest.
Yeah. Well, okay. So before we started working together, I thought I had an okay personal statement. I didn't have a lot of people review it or edit it. I was just like, okay, this seems okay with me. Like I'm, you know, glad with it, or I'm happy with it. And then during our first meeting when we were going over edits, it was pretty brutal. Like I didn't think it was so bad.
Mhm.
But you made me kind of like realize like, okay, this does kind of sound basic. This does have a lot of parts that I feel like I'm just putting in to just make myself sound better as a PA applicant.
Mhm.
And I did what everyone, or a lot of people I thought did. I went online, I looked up how to write a PA personal statement, and I was just putting in words that I thought they wanted to hear, like underserved communities and what's that, the flexibility to switch specialties, because that's honestly what draws a lot of people to the profession.
Mhm.
um, so after meeting, I was like, oh my gosh, I sound so basic. I probably sound like everyone else. But I think you were the only one who really wasn't afraid to just take a deep dive into it and tell me like truthfully like what it needed to be, and what to leave out. But I'm really glad, I had that constructive criticism, because
Mhm.
I don't know who else would have told me. Um, but I guess it worked out a lot. it really worked out well because of the success I've had this cycle.
Okay. So since we're well, one of the things too, I don't know if I remember like from your first cycle when you submitted, but we had you submit early and you did get an interview right away. So um I remember it's like June or July, I think you had your first interview.
Yeah, I had it in my this cycle. My first interview was in June.
Okay. And so then we start off with your mock interview prep. And so tell me about your experience with that preparation.
Okay, the mock interviews I thought were the most worth it from working with you and getting, services from you. Um, yeah, I mean, I got the package that came with the unlimited mock
Hmm.
interviews, and that was just the best thing I could have done for myself. Just because when I was getting all these interview invites, I was like, okay, I need to practice so much, and doing them all with you and kind of just doing it like so much every week really helped me get over that like anxiety. I just got so much more confident just from a few practice runs. I had a better idea of like what to say, like what I just had a better idea of how to answer the questions. And I feel like I kind of got a better perspective of like how to answer the question in terms of like how they want to hear it,
Hmm.
like what they're really looking for.
Right.
So, honestly, the more you do, the better you'll get at it. And I'm really grateful for the practice I had with you too.
Great. Well, thank you. Okay. So how many interviews did you get this cycle?
10 interview invites.
So
um,
from 0 to 10.
yeah, I know. So far, it's, yeah,
Right. So
I know.
far.
Still counting, but I'm happy.
And
10
how many
interview.
acceptances did you get?
I got 6. I did turn down 2 interview
Hmm.
invites. Um, what's called, and then I got waitlisted from one interview,
Right.
which I later turned down.
Hmm.
Yeah, 6 acceptances.
So quite a difference from the first cycle.
Oh yeah.
Now, in your opinion, I mean, I know we're kind of showing some of the ideas and it's probably very obvious in some of it, but looking back at the first time you applied and then this cycle, I mean, you can see the difference, not just obviously the acceptances and the interviews, but even in the whole process. Do you see
Yeah.
the difference yourself?
Oh yeah. I think I looked at my whole application. I was like, I just made everything better. I got way better, or I got way more hours. I had a way better personal statement. I probably got better letters of rec,
Hmm.
uh, just because well, between the first and second cycle, I got to really know my colleagues and my PAs and physicians that I work with more closely. So, and then also just the experiences, I kept working on those. I just kept trying to, build up my application
Hmm.
in that way.
So out of the all the other acceptances, we're not going to go into those, but why did you choose ultimately to go to Marshall B. Ketchum?
Well, Marshall B. Ketchum was actually like at the top of my list when I was putting together a list. And I chose it for the reasons, well, it's actually very close to home. But aside from that, I went to a lot of their events on campus. And I have a friend actually who goes to the program, the PA program. So just kind of having that like experience and talking to her and going to these events and meeting the faculty there. I was like, oh my gosh, they're an amazing program. I love the campus. I just love how like friendly they are
Hmm.
from just from a on-campus event for pre-PA students. So I was like, okay, being a student under their wing is probably going to be so great to be working with these like super nice people who have so much knowledge about the profession already. Um, but yeah, that was mostly why I chose it. Also, their curriculum is structured very. I like how their curriculum is structured. They have like group testing and they do pass no pass too. So I don't know. I was just looking into the details more and it stuck out to me.
Well, it is a great program, and I know you made a great choice. So, all right, this is what this is what mostly why people listen to these. They want to know what advice do you have to somebody else who is maybe it's their first time, maybe they didn't get in. What would you what advice would you give to somebody else that was in your shoes a year ago?
I would say the biggest tip would be to seek out professional help as soon as possible. If you're still early in the process of applying to PA school, I would get started on your patient care hours. I wouldn't. I wish I would have started in college. I said I waited until after, but I really wish I got a head start on that because if I had, I wanted to get in my first cycle ideally, but it's okay. It happens.
Hmm.
You just have to pick yourself up again and see what you need to work on. But getting professional help, like someone like James, um, before your first cycle would be my biggest tip if you want to get in your first cycle as well.
Okay. And I know we were talking about earlier, so how are you preparing for PA school?
I'm doing nothing. I'm having so much fun. I'm just like, and honestly, at all these interviews I went to, mostly all the PA students, that was their biggest advice, like how to prepare for PA school. Don't
Right.
like, don't read don't get a head start on anatomy, physio, all of that. They just said to really enjoy your few months off before you start a crazy, rigorous program. So I've been doing exactly that. I've just been having so much free time. I don't know what to do with it, but it feels great. I was crying in my car like 2 years ago, thinking I wasn't good enough for PA school. And like, look at me now. I'm rooting for everyone who's watching this. You guys will also be here in one day,
Mhm.
and you're gonna appreciate the time you'll have before PA school too, before starting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I remember first meeting you and you now versus you before, very different person. And it's hard if you don't get in that first cycle and you kind of, am I even doing the right thing? But it pays off and I see in you, you're so relaxed now. You're so, you know, so confident and sure of yourself. Whereas I know before, just like I kept telling you this is gonna work out, it'll be okay. But
I know. I was so nervous going into each meeting that we had together. I was like, oh my
mm,
gosh, to prep for my meeting with James. Like, I got so just, yeah. But eventually, your confidence will just
yeah.
flourish, like you
Yep.
said. Yeah.
Well, I thank you for taking this time to do this. I know it's going to be very helpful for others who listen to this, and I just hope you stay in touch. It was a pleasure working with you. As I've said, don't ever hesitate to reach out back to us if you ever have any questions or need anything. But thank you again for doing this today.
Yeah, of course, James. Thank you for everything too.